Hey guys, welcome to ANS Solver. Today we'll be learning the concept of modulus inequalities, which is a subtopic in the chapter of Algebra P2. Okay, so this concept is more about the steps and the procedure. So what I'll do is I'll give you all a sum, okay, and I'll explain how to solve it step by step. So please note down the steps as it's a very important concept to know. Okay, let's say if I have a sum, something like the mod of 3x minus 2, okay, is less than the mod of x plus 5. Okay, as you can see, there's an inequality sign here. Okay, in the previous concept which we learned, which was the modulus function, there was an equal to sign in the middle. But here we have an inequality sign. So the steps are a little different. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll write the steps in red so that you're clear, and the working in black. Okay, so first, the step 1. What you basically need to do here is you simply need to square both sides. Okay, you can simply square both the sides. Okay, so when you square both sides, you get something like 3x minus 2 the whole square, which is less than x plus 5 the whole square. Correct? So this is what you did. Now step 2, step 2, what you need to do is you need to identify and solve the algebra. Okay, you need to identify and solve the algebra to get a quadratic. Okay, so now basically what you need to do here is, as you can see, this is basically in the a minus b the whole square form, and you know that a minus b the whole square is basically a square plus b square minus 2 into a into b. Okay, and as you can see, this is basically a plus b the whole square, and the formula for a plus b the whole square is a square plus b square plus 2ab. So using these two formulas, I can write this as 3x the whole square, correct, plus 2 square minus 2 into 3x into 2, which is basically less than x square plus 5 square plus 2 into x into 5. Correct? This is what I can write. So now I can basically write this as 9x square plus 4 minus 2 into 3, which is 6, 6 into 2, which is 12. So I simply get 12x, which is less than x square plus 25, which is 5 square plus 10x. So I can rearrange this and get everything on one side. Let's say I get everything on the LHS. So I can write this as 9x square minus x square minus 12x minus 10x plus 4 minus 25, which is less than 0. Got it? So now 9x square minus x square basically gives me 8x square, minus 12x minus 10x gives me minus 22x, and 4 minus 25 gives me minus 21, which is less than 0. So now you obtain this quadratic. Now the step 3, okay, is simple. You just need to solve the quadratic equation. Okay, you need to solve the quadratic equation. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll just write EQN. Yeah. You need to solve the quadratic equation using the calci. Correct? So basically you need to know this, how to solve a quadratic on the calci. There are certain steps which I'll explain. Okay, so what you need to do is basically on the calci, okay, you need to go to mode. When you click on mode, you need to click on 5 where equation is written, And when you click on 5, you can simply click on 3. Correct? When you do that, you get 3 coefficient boxes. These are basically called coefficient boxes. Correct? In the first coefficient box, put 8, which is the coefficient of x square. In the second one, put minus 22, which is the coefficient of x. And in the last one, put minus 21. So when you plug in 8, minus 22, and minus 21, okay, you basically get the critical values. Okay, you obtain something called as critical values. Very important, you need to write this down. Please note this down, this is really important. Okay, where you basically get x equals to 7 over 2 and you get your x equals to minus 3 over 4. These are critical values because these are equal to. Okay, but as you know, you have a modulus inequality, so you need to determine the signs. Okay, which is basically the step 4. Okay, so I'll move on to step 4. Okay, so the first thing you need to do in step 4, because step 4 will have many steps. Okay, so I'll write those down for you. So the first step is basically make a number line. Make a number line. Okay, make a simple number line. What you can do is, let's say I make a number line something like this. Okay, I know minus 3 over 4 lies somewhere here and 7 over 2 lies somewhere here. And these are basically your critical values. Agreed? Okay. Now what you need to do is, the next step is basically take a number. Okay. Take a number in between the critical values. In between the critical values. Okay, I'll write CV. Okay. So let's say if I take a number which is 1. Okay, it lies between minus 3 over 4 and 7 over 2. Agreed? What you do is, now take this number 1. Okay, take 1. Take any number basically. In this case it's 1. Take 1 and plug it in the quadratic. Okay, sorry. The quadratic. Sorry, I'll just write it. Just give me 1 second. The quadratic equation. Okay. So what you do is, you take 1 and substitute it in this equation here. So you simply get 8 into 1 square minus 22 into 1 minus 21. When you do that, you get your answer basically as minus 35. When you put something like this, you get your answer as minus 35. But here, you are more concerned about the sign. When you took a value between minus 3 over 4 and 7 over 2, which were the critical values, you get a negative answer. Correct? Now, a very important rule to know is that the sign, okay, the sign after every critical value, okay, every critical value changes. Okay, the sign after every critical value changes. A very important concept to know. That means if this is negative here, I know this is positive and this is positive. Because let's say that this thing here, okay, is positive, then there's a critical value, then it's negative, then there's another critical value, and then it's positive again. Okay, so this concept is very important to know. Okay, now you need to see what you need. You need the quadratic to be less than 0 here. What does less than 0 mean? You need the quadratic to be negative. That means, when do you get a negative sign in the number line? Okay, that's another step. So identify the sign required. This is a very important step. Okay, in this case we need a negative sign. So when do you get a negative sign in the number line? When basically you take values which is more than -3/4 and values which is less than 7/2. So basically x, okay, when it's basically more than -3/4 and when x, okay, is less than 7/2. This is when you get the negative value, the negative sign, correct? But now, before finalizing your answer, what you need to do is, you need to carry out a very important step, which is the step 5. The final step, okay, you need to understand this properly. This step is basically called verifying. Okay, verifying the values. So basically, take a value which is more than -3/4. Let's say I take which is more than -3/4. That's simple. Let me take something like 2. Okay, and I know 2 is even less than 7/2. So let's say I take my value here as 2. Now what I'll do is, with this value, I'll take 2 and substitute into this equation here. Okay, so in the left hand side when I put 2, I basically get 3 into 2, which is 6, and 6 minus 2, which is 4. And the mod of 4 is basically 4. Now here in the RHS, when I simply put 2, I get 2 plus 5, which is 7, and the mod of 7 is 7. And as you can see, 7 is simply more than 4. Got it? That means 2 is verified and it's satisfying the modulus function. That means both these critical values are verified. Okay, so now I know both these values are correct, they are verified. Okay, so what I can simply do is, I can simply write x, which is in between -3/4 and 7/2. Okay, so this is basically the final answer. So the most important step here is verifying, because there have been some questions in the past paper which we'll even do in this video later, that where you get two values like this, but one of the value doesn't verify properly and it doesn't satisfy the inequality. So we need to eliminate that value. We'll do that sum in this video. Okay, but basically this sum was for you to understand the basic steps. We can again go through the steps. Okay, so the first step is simple. You need to simply square both the sides. The second step is you need to identify the algebra, the a minus b the whole square, a plus b the whole square, and you need to solve till you get a quadratic. Once you get a quadratic, you can solve the quadratic equation using the calci, okay, to get the bunch of critical values, the two critical values, which will be with an equal to sign. Now, to identify the sign in the middle, the inequality sign, you need to perform step 4, which is basically make a number line, then plug in the critical values in the number line, which is -3/4 and 7/2. Okay, then take a value in between them, plug it in this quadratic, okay, and determine the sign. Here we got -35, which was negative, and then you know that the sign after every critical value changes, a very important concept. So if this here is negative, then this becomes positive, and even this becomes positive. Okay, once they are positive, you need to see what you require. Here you needed less than 0, that means you need the negative sign. Let's say if there's a case where it's more than 0, then you need a positive sign. Okay, so that you need to know. Okay, and once you identify the sign which is required, you can write x more than -3/4 and x less than 7/2, and then the final step is basically verifying it. Okay, really simple. So I think now we can move on to some past paper examples. Okay, so this is the first past paper example which we have. Okay, so this is from 2020 May-June paper 33. Okay, so we need to solve this inequality, okay, which is the mod of 2x minus 1, which is more than 3 into the mod of x plus 2. So the first step is basically squaring. So I simply write 2x minus 1 the whole square, which is more than, here when I square this full thing here, okay, something like this, I basically get 3 square into x plus 2 the whole square. Okay, so here I basically get a minus b the whole square. So I get 2x the whole square plus 1 square minus 2 into 2x into 1, which is simply more than 3 square, which is 9, multiplied by this thing here is a plus b the whole square. So I get x square plus 2 square, correct, plus 2 into x into 2, correct. This is what I get. So I can write this as 4x square plus 1 minus 4x, which is more than 9 into x square plus 4 plus 4x. Now I can simply write this as 4x square minus 4x plus 1, which is simply more than 9 into x square gives me 9x square plus 9 into 4 gives me 36 plus 9 into 4x gives me 36x. Now what I can do is I can get everything on one side. Let's say I get everything to the RHS. So I basically get 0, which is more than 9x square minus 4x square plus 36x plus 4x plus 36 minus 1. Correct? This is what I simply get as my answer, or as my equation. Now what I can do is, I can write this as 9x square minus 4x square, which is basically 5x square, correct, plus 40x plus 35, which is less than 0, correct. Now the step is to solve this quadratic using the Calc. So on the calculator, what you can simply do is you can go to mode. When you go to mode, you can go to 5 where equation is written. When you go to 5, you can click on 3. So you basically get 3 coefficient boxes, correct. In the first coefficient box, put the coefficient of x square, which is 5. In the second box, put 40, which is the coefficient of x, and in the last one, put the constant, which is 35. Okay, so I'll repeat the steps. Go to mode, 5, 3, then put 5, 40 and 35. And when you click on equal to, you get your critical values, which is CV. So you get your x basically as minus 1, and you get your x basically as minus 7. Now the next step is basically making the number line here, correct. So when you make the number line, I know I have minus 7 somewhere here, and I have minus 1 somewhere here. Now take a value in between them. Let's say I take minus 2. Okay, now I can basically plug in minus 2 into this quadratic here. So I get 5 into minus 2 the whole square plus 40 into minus 2 plus 35. When I do that, I get my answer basically as negative 25, which is basically a negative answer. So I basically get a negative sign here. Got it? And the sign after every critical value changes. That means this becomes positive and even this becomes positive. Correct? Now, what do I need here? I basically need this quadratic to be less than 0. So I need it to be negative. When is, where do we have the negative sign in the number line? Where I know x is more than minus 7. And when I know x is less than minus 1. But before finalizing my answer, I always verify, correct? Now, let's say I need a value which is more than minus 7 and less than minus 1. Let's say I take minus 3. Okay, minus 3 is my verifying value. So what I basically need to do is I need to take minus 3 and plug it in this equation. Okay, so in my left hand side, I'll basically get 2 into minus 3 minus 1 mod. which is basically minus 7 mod, and minus 7 mod is simply 7. And on the on the right hand side, I'll basically get 3 into the mod of minus 3 plus 2, which is basically 3 into the mod of minus 1, which is 3 into 1, as the mod of minus 1 is 1. So I get 3. And I know my 7 is more than 3, correct? That means for this value, it has been verified. So both my values here are correct. Okay. So now I can simply just write my final answer as x in between minus 7 and minus 1. Correct? This is how I can write my answer. Okay. So basically in this region, okay, minus 3 is actually satisfying both the values here. That's why I only took one value. Normally what happens is, let's say if, okay, this is an example. Okay, just so that you know. Let's say if I get a number line something like this with two critical values here. Okay, this is critical value 1, critical value 2. And let's say this is negative, and this is positive. And if I need, a negative sign in my quadratic, so I basically get x which is less than critical value 1, and I get x which is more than critical value 2. Okay, so while verifying, what I simply do is, okay, this is important to know, I take a value which is less than the critical value 1 and put it into this equation here and see if it's verifying. If it's verifying, then I can finalize this answer. And then I take a value which is more than critical value 2 and put it in this quadratic here. And if it's verifying, then even this is my answer. So I get two answers. Okay, but now we'll do the next sum. Okay, where we'll see that what if, it does not verify, then how do we eliminate, okay, the value. Okay, we'll learn that in the next sum, okay, which is a past paper sum. So this is the concept just I wanted to tell you, okay, because the two sums which we did right now were quite similar, only the numbers were different. So this is what I wanted to mention. So let's go to the next past paper question here. Okay, this is 2020 October-November paper 31. So the first step is the same. You need a square. So I get 2 minus 5x the whole square, which is more than 2 square into x minus 3 the whole square. So as you can see, I get a minus b the whole square, which is simply 2 square plus 5x the whole square minus 2 into 2 into 5x, which is more than 2 square, which is simply 4, into I get x square plus 3 square minus 2 into x into 3. Correct? This is what I get. So now I have 2 square, which is simply 4, plus 5 square, which is 25, x square minus 2 into 2 is 4, 4 into 5 is simply 20. So I get 20x, which is simply more than 4 into x square, correct, plus 9 minus 6x. So I simply get 4 plus 25x square minus 20x, which is more than, when I take my 4 inside the bracket, I get 4x square plus 4 into 9, which is 36, minus 4 into 6, which is 24x. Now I can get everything to one side. So I simply get 25x square minus 4x square minus 20x, correct, plus 24x plus 4 minus 36, which is simply more than 0. Correct? This is what I simply get. So now what I can simply do is I can do 25x square minus 4x square, which basically gives me 21x square. Correct? Now I get 24x minus 20x. I simply get 4x. Okay, and 4 minus 36 gives me minus 32. Correct? This is what I get, which is simply more than 0. Now what I can do is I can simply use my calculator for this. Okay, so on the Calc, what I can simply do is I can click simply on mode. When I click on mode, I can click on 5 where equation is written. When I click on 5, I can simply click on 3. Correct? When I do that, I simply get 3 big coefficient boxes. Correct? This is what I get. In the first box, I can put 21, which is the coefficient of x square. In the second box, I can put 4. And in the last box, I can put minus 32. So when I put 21, 4, and minus 32, I get my critical values. Correct? I get my critical values basically as x equals to 8 over 7. And I get x equals to minus 4 over 3. This is what I get. Now, the next step is to make the number line, which I'll simply make here. Correct? So I have minus 4 over 3 and I have 8 over 7. Correct? These are basically my two critical values. Let's say I take a value in between them. Let's say I take 1. Okay? I simply put 1 into this equation. So I simply get 21. Okay, 21 into 1 square. Correct? Plus 4 into 1 minus 32, which basically gives me negative 7. Correct? Negative 7 is the value. That means I get a negative answer here. Now the sign after every critical value changes. Correct? So I basically get a positive value here and I get a positive value here. Now, what do you need? You need the quadratic to be more than 0. More than 0 basically means you need it to be positive. Correct? Where in the number line, where do you have positive? When you have your x, correct, which is basically less than minus 4 over 3, correct, which is basically here, and when you have your x, which is more than 8 over 7. Correct? This is what I have. So these are the answers. But now the last and very important step, which is basically verifying. Okay? So now we need to verify each and every critical value. Okay? Basically the answers which you get, both the answers. So first, when I verify x less than minus 4 over 3, okay, I take a value which is less than minus 4 over 3. Let's say I take minus 2, okay, to verify. Now I take minus 2 and plug it in this equation here. So in the left hand side, when I put minus 2, I get 2 into 5 into minus 2, which basically gives me 12. And now when I put minus 2 here in the right hand side, first I get minus 2 minus 3, which is minus 5, and the mod of minus 5, okay, the mod of minus 5 is simply 5. Now 2 into 5 is 10. Correct? And I know 12 is more than 10. That means this is verified. So I know that this thing here is one of my answers. Like it's totally verified, there's nothing wrong. Now let's take x more than 8 over 7. So if I take a value which is more than 8 over 7, okay, x more than 8 over 7, correct? Let's say I take a value positive 2. That value is more than 8 over 7. Now I'll simply put positive 2 in the left hand side first. So I get 2 minus 5 into 2, which basically gives me minus 8. And now in the right hand side, when I put positive 2, I get 2 minus 3. 2 minus 3 is basically negative 1, but mod of negative 1 is 1. And 2 into 1, okay, is 2. But here the problem is that 2 is greater than minus 8. That means if you see this sign is not the same. That means, if I take a value of x more than 8 over 7, it's not satisfying or not verifying in the critical value. That means this value here is simply eliminated. Okay, understood why? because here I said x more than 8/7 will satisfy my inequality. But here when I took a value which is more than 8/7, which is 2, it did not satisfy this inequality. That means this value will simply be eliminated, and the only answer which I'll have is x less than -4/3, which is the final answer. So I'll simply just write it down here again, x less than -4/3, correct, which is basically the final answer. So yeah, this is how you eliminate the value if it does not verify. That's why, I always ask you to verify the answer, because this was a very recent past paper, October-November paper 31, 2020, and this was asked. Okay, so it's very, very important to verify your answer. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot. Okay, to view more content, please go to the next video so that you complete this chapter. Thank you very, very much for watching.